with me today are two of the contributors to that anthology, Will McDermott and KT, who is receiving a beer from the auspices of the void. Yes. So thanks both of you for sitting in and just talking a little bit about your stories and about the universe and the process itself. Go ahead and introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are. Will?
My name is Will McDermott. I've been writing time fiction for about 20 years. My background is in gaming, so a lot of my fiction has come from gaming. I wrote a couple of Magic the Gathering novels, as well as a bunch of Magic short stories. Wrote for Black Library in Warhammer 40K universe, the Necromunda subset of that. And recently wrote a Kolchak the Night Stalker novel, which is my most recent novel that's just come out.
Cool. KT?
I'm KT Shito, and I have been writing speculative fiction and fantasy for a little while now. I've got stories in a bunch of anthologies and a couple of children's books hanging out around here. And this is my first try at anything in a game universe. So I'm super excited about this.
So let's talk a little bit about the process. You guys were two of over 80 pitch submissions that we got. I know, KT, we got multiple submissions from you. I think, Will, we did get a few different ones.
Right. Yeah, I sent 3 in, I think.
And the 2 that we selected, each one that we selected from yours was the standout that we felt really fit the form and function of aesthetic of what we wanted. So let's talk a little bit about how your stories came about. Will, you want to talk about how, I know briefly in another episode, we already talked, the Hogan's Heroes idea. So you want to talk a little bit more about just some of the characters that you came up with. Was there any type of templating or outside of using Hogan's Heroes as your views?
I love heist movies, and so I knew that I was going to need a certain set of character types, right? I was going to need. I'm also a huge fan of Leverage, which is coming back, and so I knew I was going to need a hitter. I love Elliot, and so that that is why I brought in. You'll have to remind me, is it the Athena? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Athena. So he was basically the muscle. I knew I was going to need a leader type, and I was going through the species information that you had sent, and was going through, and the Cordrona really kind of leapt out at me as cool, collected, the kind of leader type, and that's how Horowang came about. And then I knew I needed a scrounger. And that turned out to be Workin, the Aviles, who's also kind of the tech person who can hack into stuff for me. And so, basically just kind of the prototypical heist characters, really, but then embedding them into some of the different races in the universe. And then, of course, I knew I needed a pilot because, it's science fiction, and a heist without a pilot, someone to get away. And, in a lot of heist movies, you have the driver. And so, yeah, then that was the Mazaroon, Lobo, who turned out to be probably my favorite character to write, because I love writing just cocky, sarcastic characters. They're actually very easy to write. Has nothing to do with me, I promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of love that about your story, where you took the archetypes and you made them fit within the world, but you also just kind of put your own little spin towards them, spin on them. So that really worked for me, because a lot of times when you're working with an archetype, when you're working with a set character, everybody has these expectations, and you just kind of turn it on the ear just a little bit. Your characters could work other places, but the fact that they worked here was because of the cues that you took from the World Bible and everything like that. And I just really love that.
Well, thank you. Yeah. My characters tend to come to life inside my head, and then it's just a matter of getting that essence of them from my head down onto the page.
Yeah. I understand that completely.
Yeah. And this, I think I said this in the last panel, that this story just flowed right out of me. I mean, it was like 4 days of intense writing, and I don't think I've ever written a story faster than I wrote this one. It just really wanted to be told.
Yeah. So KT, let's talk about your Dance Too Far. So obviously it's an unusual romantic story that involves AI of all things, and interesting look at the Cartels, which are basically cartels within the Tog Empire. And if you're not sure what that means, think about like basically space mafia, which is I think is what we told you. So this space mafia, but more altruistic in some aspects than others. It was a nice blending of the different type of archetypes there. Let's talk about Zinni though. How did you come up with that type of, he's not a meek character, but he's very reserved, I think, is a good way to put it. How did you kind of conceive and see him develop through the story?
So when you guys gave me the whole space mafia cue, I went back and I thought about a lot of the mafia stories that I have read and watched and seen over the years. And I actually went back and watched The Godfather. And I was like, yeah, you know what? He's not any of these guys. He's like he's a little combination of a lot of these guys. And maybe more along the lines of, if you guys are familiar with the Japanese, like clubs, the Yakuza, he's a little bit more that type. So there's a lot of family tradition, but there's a lot of, what, it's all about your honor. It's all about maintaining your status, and it's all about not doing anything to bring your whole family down. And so that, if you have a character who, all right, I am the second son, I have got to live up to all of these expectations, and at the same time, I've got to protect my family and our family interests and all of that. You're going to create a character who is very reserved, who is very, very cognizant of the way things have to be, and pushes himself because the family, the Cartels, is kind of a box in the universe. It's a very big place to sit that box in. So he's juggling a lot of balls. And so that's how I approached creating this character. And then I pulled from the people around me that I love and respect. So there's a lot of my husband in this character. There's a lot of my brother in this character. There's a little bit of an ego because I love the Princess Bride, Yeah. It's just, I pulled from a lot of places to create a guy that I felt like at the end of all of this was relatable. Because, no matter where you're writing, if you're writing a story, and it doesn't matter what genre you're writing in, it all boils down to the character, and it boils down to whether or not that character is something that's going to resonate with your reader, even if they're not that person. They might know that person.
Yeah.
So.
And I think the ending, in the back of your mind, I don't want to spoil it, but you kind of read it, and you're doing your inward personal cringe because you can imagine doing it yourself. And the end result there, yeah.
Well, you know what? Dating is a minefield. I said it before, and I'll say it again. You know what? I am so cracked not to have to be doing that. And I can't imagine that it will get any better 75 centuries into the future.
That's very true.
And people are people.
Yeah.
People are people. So.
You know what I really liked about your story, KT, was one of the more interesting things in the universe when I was reading through all of the material that Ben had sent us was those, and they're not AI, they're
advancing.
What did it say?
Advanced intelligence, not artificial.
Yeah, advanced intelligence. But the marrying of your ancestors into an AI was incredibly interesting. And I thought you did such a perfect job of showing how powerful that can be, but also the limitations of it, because Uncle wasn't necessarily up to date on all of his information.
No, he was. But I mean, if you're gonna have an avatar that is, that you're relying on, that's going to be pulling from basically the space internet for his information, there's going to be gaps, because that's how the internet works now, and it's going to keep working the same way. There's got to be gaps. It's never going to be 100%. And the fact that the main limitation of this universe is not artificial intelligence, it's advanced intelligence. Right. And so advanced intelligence, that human factor, and I think that is one of the main points of this anthology. And the whole reboot is that it's about what it means to be human. And so that humanity remains in the technology. So, and humans are quirky. So why wouldn't the tech be quirky? The tech would have to be quirky by definition, Yeah. So, and I love that. And that was a suggestion that I think you guys gave me that I just kind of twisted and ran with. But I mean, I twisted and ran with just about everything, because my idea coming into this, I know we talked about this in the other interview, was I purposefully kept my pitch very simple and small, because I'm like, you know what, I want this to be able to fit. And so if we have to tweak it, if it's super detailed, then it's going to be really hard for me to tweak and make it fit within this world. And so I was so happy that you all chose that one, although I wasn't expecting you to choose that one. Of the 5 I sent, I was like, I'm sending 5. This one probably has the least chance. And you all chose that one. And I went, oh.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason why was when we were looking at it, the advanced intelligence concept wasn't in place at this point. We had left that kind of nebulous. Someone had floated like, what about AI? Is this a thing? Because obviously we're, even now in the 21st century, we're getting, closer to that point. Right. And when you brought up, basically he goes across the universe for a Tinder date, was I think the simple way that you would put it. We realized, wait a minute. So apps now, so what would they look like? And then we had a short sidebar discussion about, okay, so let's answer this: AI versus AI, so advanced versus artificial. And then we realized, based on that idea, that if we took your idea and then made it an avatar that was more of a collection of knowledge and like a Cortana type, artifact, where it was consistent of all the knowledge that was put into it and then personified, then I think Josh had the idea of these giant avatars that the sovereigns would use to help govern. And then I actually went farther than that and said, well, what if we had intelligence that worked on base level functions, such as sanitation, like controlling sanitation and controlling air traffic
communications and all of that.
So all these things are they're automated, and they have some form of rough intelligent logic that, so when you're talking to space control, you're actually talking to an artificial or an advanced intelligence. But we didn't want to go the artificial route, even though that was possible, because we were looking at the idea of humanity and being human. If you create something that's not human, is that following the guidelines that Tog, which is our main manipulator of that pillar, is that true to their beliefs and understanding? And it is not. So that's why we said, okay, so AI, advanced artificial intelligence, true artificial intelligence, is a banned technology, because they know that branches it into a direction they don't want humanity to be. That's not defined as humanity. So why would you?
And that's what I loved about it, because then you take that and you keep the humanity in it, and then it becomes, well, you know what? It's a status symbol. So of course the Cortez are going to have their own avatar. They're going to have their own advanced intelligence icons that they're using, and maybe we keep them all in a shrine, and that's a proof of our wealth here, where everybody that comes into our our compound is going to have to walk through this and see, look at all of these things that we have, and you can actually go talk to them, and it's a thing, and it's just one more layer that we can add, so the universe becomes that much more rich and exciting and fun, to my way of thinking. And I think that's why my first draft ended up so long, because I just kind of went off. And then you guys were like, no, reel this back in, dude. Come on. There's other people in this book, and you don't need any of that for your story. And I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah. But it was really, it's easier to info dump in and pull that out than it is to feel like you're missing something and not know how to push it.
Right. And I think giving you guys so much allowed you to pick and choose and say, no, we like that, we don't like that, we like this, and no, like that. Okay, just keep going. And
I know when we came to Will, there was we did not have a lot of redrafts on yours, because you pretty much already had the core elements of everything laid out. I think we just tweaked things to fit the perceptions of like the union government, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But beyond that, it was you were already self-contained as far as the story went, which there's no different between both stories. Are excellent for different reasons, and it's just the approach that each writer takes to it.
I think one thing I loved about Willow's was the fact that, I have met every single one of those officials that you had your characters interact with. I have met those people, and I hated them, and I hated them in your story too. I mean, the mom, I was like, hello, Karen.
Oh yeah.
I totally was like, I said, oh yeah, this is so spot on, and this woman, exactly who she is. She is it's like Space Kardashian almost,
And I'll say that the aunties of your rival family, or the family to be, the aunties, I had 3 great aunts who were exactly like that.
Yeah.
So
I did too.
Yeah, those scenes felt very real.
Those people. You're probably related to them.
Are we sure about him?
Yeah. I had a lot of fun with the meeting scene. Let's put it that way. Yeah. A lot of fun. And I can't wait for my family to read it, just for that exact reason, because they know.
Well, hopefully it'll come back and say, this isn't me, is it? Fortunately, I've never had that happen, but
if you ever do,
they'll know exactly who that is, and it's not somebody we're actually related to, so it's okay.
Yeah, if you ever do put friends and family into your stories, make
you
sure
gotta
let them know before it comes out.
Right. Well, like, no, none of y'all are in this.
Yeah.
And because they were like, did you use your mom for Jenny's mom? I'm like, no. Nope, did not. I know better. Because Jenny's mom had to be very specific.
Yeah. So
I love her character too, though.
So outside of all the information that you guys put, reference and put into your story, so outside of your story boxes, what aspect of the universe did you guys find fascinating that obviously you couldn't work into your story because it wouldn't have fit? But is there an aspect of something about the Renegade Legion universe that you would love to explore, if possibly down the line in a different story?
I think for me, it's the assimilation process.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to dive deeper into that. And one of my other ideas, I think, was dealing a little bit more with that. One of them that I think you didn't choose for future use was very much embedded in the assimilation process and kind of the pros and cons of how that all happens. It was more of a think piece, and I think we're wanting to be more adventurous anyway. But yeah, that would be something that I would want to delve more into. And I think one of the other ideas that you did like that might get that we might pick up later on will be give me a chance to take a look at more of that assimilation process. But I like how it really defines the tog as, I don't know how much I can go into here, but they're I think we talked about this in the last one, is that it's the universe is shades of gray. It's not black and white. The Tog aren't good, they're not evil, they're just this large empire that is slowly taking over the universe, but their ideals are such that there's good and bad in what they're doing. And so, they're not just the empire, they're more than that. And I think you did a nice job in your story, Ben, of kind of bringing some of that out, that it's not, the Tog's not all bad. There's good pieces of it and good people who are doing things that they believe in inside that entity. And that's something I would like to definitely take a look at if I get to write some future stories.
Yeah. Katie, what about you?
Part of me really wants to wallow in my little character's corner. But there was, aside from the assimilation piece, which I really feel like, because I love psychological horror, and I can see pieces of that going that way. So that's one. But my other thing is that when you guys talked about the renegades, I really want to kind of get my fingers into that, because what is the person that, my entire life has been Tog, and then now I'm not? That guy, I think that guy is going to be really interesting, and anything he does after walking away from the Tog, because it's a conscious decision, to be like, what? They are the universe, and I'm not going to be a part of that anymore. Walking away from that, that's going to be that guy. He's going to be interesting. He's going to be fun to be writing with. I think that's where I want to go.
Cool.
After I finish my stuff.
No, that's good. That's good to hear. Those are two very important pillars that we, established ahead of time, that, we really want to make these things stand out as different than these other star-spanning civilization stories from all these different other writers that are out there putting stuff out. Because I think both of these really address issues that are even now permeate they permeate our civilization even now. Because assimilation comes back to colonization, decolonization, and then the separation of leaving something that has formed you, but then you become so dissonant to it that how do you break away and still retain who you are by definition of that growing up process, but then how do you redefine that to a better understanding and a better person, as the Renegades are going to do. So I think those are two of the big pillars that we really wanted to step up. So I do know that,
I think that was one of those things that I loved about your story, Ben, was that it tied all those little pieces together, and there were so many different paths that you could take. You just sprinkled it all in, so that we all want more. We all want to know more about each of the things you mentioned, just offhand ways. Mm-hmm. In your story, it's like, oh, that's just something, no, the story's about this, but you know what? I mentioned this, I mentioned that, you planted a very fertile field there.
That's partially just that's partially how I do my storytelling, is like, I'm a fan of long arc, like Babylon 5 was a hugely important series to me because of so many different things, and I find JMS is.
We're rewatching that right now, at dinner time every night. That's so awesome.
I consider JMS a writing mentor just because of his story building, crafting, and when that series was on, I was just out of college. I was starting a writing career in real life jobs and all that stuff, and just how he would drop stuff in, even in the first season, which a lot of people pan. There's things in there that are marinate through so many years, and then they crop up in seasons 4 and 5, and I love epic arcs like that, where these little things that are dropped, and then you're reading through, and it's like, oh, I remember that, and I feel invested in the story then, because I'm remembering and savoring these bits, which is why whenever I go into the bookstore, if I see a series and it's like book 3 of whatever, I'm like, well, what does book 1 look like? Because I want to start, if I'm going to get it, I got to start at number 1, because I'm going to feel I'll feel totally out of place going forward from there. But then so that's part of just my style, is I like to drop stuff like that, and being part of the Battletech IP for 16 years has part of what I did was that. But then the other reason, and I don't know if I mentioned it with you, KT, but most anthologies have a theme, typically a theme overarching. So like, it's about either like an emotion or an event or something along those lines. Our theme, loosely defined, was introduction. We wanted to introduce the genre capability and voices that can exist in this universe. But I still felt that all these stories needed to have some slight connective tissue. And so when I did mine, I could have easily ended it at the escape point, right, where one of the breaks is at, where I could have easily ended it there. And in fact, I actually had ended it there. But then I thought about it for a day, and I'm like, there has to be something there that we can tie back. And I would love to be able to call back to everybody else's stories, not just in like theme stuff. Like obviously I had an AI, which is in KT's story, and I had a couple of aliens that are mentioned in some of the other stories, and this, that, and the other. But so I did, it's more like a very slow denouement / epilogue that at the very end, you're seeing the character reference these small pieces, and they're not even exactly worded the same to make you immediately think of the stories you just read, but they're worded in a way that if you read all the stories before it, because mine is the last piece, for this specific reason, that I think in Will's case, I mentioned a particular thing happened that his people were involved with. KT, I think yours was just a throwaway marriage announcement, in there. And the reasoning for that was specifically to have the reader have that emotion of, oh, I know what that is. I just read that. Or, oh, I remember, I know what that's about. And you feel a little bit more invested and connected to the story at that point. And that's why I wanted to do that. And I think it works really well, even though I'm not a big fan of long drawn out endings. I tried to make it as interesting as possible so that it gave you that connection. And I think I threw in a little bit more about the character and his relationship with his partner, which, my intent is that Carson, the main character, you'll see later on, he'll be a recurring character, mainly because I'm planning on using him as a resource for the RPG material that we'll be putting out next year. And maybe in, some of the other short stories or whatever we have coming up. So, so before we go, I just wanted to mention, both of you we have options on second stories for the second anthology, based on either pitches you've put in. And then obviously, if you think about, you want to do a connection story with what you just wrote, obviously, that's something we can talk about too. And we're really excited about that. We're really hoping that the funding surpasses all of our goals, our tier goals, so that it allows us the ability to get some more stories into the second anthology, as well as sales for how this first one goes. So, if you're a fan, if you read a couple of the stories, you really like them, please pass it on to your friends and your family, and get them to buy in, because I think there's a huge opportunity for all types of genre lovers to find a place and a home in a story in this universe. And you two have done a great job in bringing that to life for us. So with that, is there any final words you guys
I
want?
really enjoyed writing the story and the whole process, even though it was super fast.
Yeah.
I hope we have more time for the next one.
We will. Yep.
But I really enjoyed it, and I hope we get to do the second anthology, because I like the pitch that you guys chose a lot, and I think that it has potential to show the other side of Kat's writing. So, I don't do much romance, but y'all will see this other stuff. The other stuff is more me.
Well, whatever. You're a solid writer, and the fact that you stuck it out and did a different genre than you're used to and did a great job with it, I think speaks well just to your overall skill set. So, yeah.
Yeah, I did not even realize that was that the KT story was set in a genre that she doesn't work in very often, because I thought she pulled it off really well. It was enjoyable throughout, and I liked the characters a lot, and it was a fun read.
Yep.
I just kind of as an ending thing, Ben, I want to say I really enjoyed that ending of your story, because I thought you did one of the things it does really nicely is it showed that this is one large universe. That all of the stuff that was happening in this anthology was all happening at the same time in this galaxy-spanning universe of the game. And the other thing I had noticed, I haven't read all of them yet, but the other thing I've noticed in all the stories I've read is that there are little mysteries in each of them that don't get resolved.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't find out why all of a sudden Zinni's situation has changed. There's this mystery going on that he's investigating, but we don't necessarily know exactly what's going on. There's in Bensor, we don't know what that object is and why it's important.
That's a huge MacGuffin there. I was like, hey,
exactly.
Are we going to get any type of explanation? No, none.
It's the Pulp Fiction suitcase.
And that's fine too. In Wu's story, there was, her love, Kritzy, right? Her love of the tank never really gets fully explained, and I really want to know more about her and her history. And I would love to get a prequel story about her just to find out what the heck was going on in her mind. So there's a lot of that in this anthology. And,
yes, there's all that. There's a lot of little whys that you want to know why. But you know what? You guys are just going to buy lots of copies of this book so we can write them.
That's right. It just shows how much is still out there to be explored in this universe. So
it's a big place. Yeah. Anyway, you said you mapped what, only half of the universe so they could populate it, and so there's a whole other half that's not even mapped, and we've just scratched the surface of this one. So
yeah,
and that's another.
We've already been thinking about how that would play, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. What's on the other side of the door? We've got some ideas about what that looks like, and even
that's
some
a
of
big idea.
And I will say, at least 3 of the stories in the anthology have very early hints as to what that might be. And I won't say which stories, and I won't say which ones they are, but you're right. Those little mysteries that we dropped all the way through.
Yeah.
Those are all things that play.
I want to reread all of them now, because I think I got 2. I gotta find that third one. I'm not sure. I know it's not yours, Ben, because you just tie things up. So.
Yeah.
And I love that there's stuff that exists that are relics from the time before the Tog, and that whole mystery is something that I would love to be able to spend some time exploring in a story.